What's up, y'all? Welcome in to DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com, use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Hope everybody has had a solid week. We've got big matchup coming up Friday night against Fresno State. CSU looking to stop the bleeding red-hot Fresno State team coming into town, though, so certainly a tough matchup. Later on in the show, I'm going to play my interview with Gabe Camarillo. He is a Bulldogs insider out there in Fresno. I just kind of picked his brain on what's been, I would say, a surprisingly successful season for Fresno State. I think a lot of people believed that Matt Entz was a solid hire, definitely a winning pedigree based on what he did at North Dakota State, goes over to USC, and now takes over a Fresno program that had significant roster turnover really on both sides of the football. Did bring back a couple of key guys, specifically in the secondary, and Corey Foreman, former 5-star recruit, he's back in the defensive line. So there are some names that we know. Donaldson, the running back, went crazy against CSU last year. But I was kind of skeptical of Fresno's potential this year, just based on the fact that you lose Malik Sherrod to Boise State. You lose Mikey Keene to Michigan. They lose, their star pass catcher from the past couple of years. It's been a lot of turnover, and for them to hit the ground running the way that they have, it's been impressive. I also think that seeing teams like Fresno, UNM, UNLV all exceeding expectations based on what was lost, based on having first-year staffs, has probably made it that much more frustrating for CSU fans. Feels like that's only salt in the wound that you're seeing all these programs kill it in year one, whereas CSU in year 4 feels like they've regressed competitively, came in with all of this hope and optimism, and there were expectations after an 8-win season, and it's just all very quickly gone out the window, unfortunately. We'll get into that Fresno matchup. I'll talk about some keys for CSU to hopefully find some success this week. That would be pretty peak CSU. Like, just as soon as we all have thrown in the towel, they rattle off a couple of wins and give everybody just enough hope to probably then rip the rug out underneath again a couple weeks after that. The Ram life is not for the weary. We'll say that. In the beginning here, I did want to give a brief update on CSU basketball recruiting. I also wanted to give a couple of thoughts on what's been a very relevant topic on Twitter this week, which is, does CSU football prioritize Colorado enough from a recruiting standpoint? So we'll do hoops first, and I'll get into that. I guess we'll get right into it here. CSU snagged their first 2027 commit in Luke Howery, an athletic, intriguing looking prospect, I would say. 6'5", 190 pounds, coming off of his sophomore year, so he's only going to get bigger and stronger. Point guard out of Chaparral High School down south. Good basketball program. If you remember back, that's where Josh Adams, the former Wyoming star, is from. They've sent a decent amount of kids D1 over the years. I think you really got to credit Ali Farokmanesh and the staff for the work they did in getting on him early. He's definitely a guy we're going to see get more and more attention here over these next 2 years. He already has some high major interest. I know CU is pretty interested in him. New Mexico's interested in him. So this is a really nice grab for CSU. And to me, a lot like what I said when we were talking about the 2026 class, it feels like it's a great example of how the perception has changed for CSU from a local standpoint on the hoop side of things. There were years and years where anytime that CSU and CU went head to head on anybody, there was just no chance the Rams were going to win that battle. Even when we started to have success with David and Isaiah, guys like Neat Clifford, we were in it, and then they always end up going to CU. And I understand it. You got the Nike deal. It's a really cool facility. I don't think it has the same energy as Moby Arena on game day, but Moby is one of those that sells better on a game night than it does on a Tuesday morning when it's empty and you can see all the scars. I mean, it's an older building. It could use a facelift for sure. But winning cures all. And when you start going on deep tournament runs, when you start winning conference championships like CSU did in Vegas last year, all of a sudden you become the cool school. And at least on the basketball side of things, it feels like the vibes with CSU are really, really solid right now. Really excited for this upcoming schedule. It's going to be a little bit chaotic with me doing, football for the next 6 weeks, and then also doing pre and post game stuff for Avalanche home games and basketball. I mean, it's going to be all over the place, but I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited about the effort they're doing from a recruiting standpoint. And I think Howery is a legit player. I mean, he shoots the ball really well. Athletic guy with the ball in his hands, averaged 17, 7, and 5 as a sophomore. Those are really, really solid numbers. He's a guy who can get hot in a hurry. I hit 6 threes against Overland, which is another solid hoops program locally. So I'm really excited about what he could be, especially in this system. Feels like a perfect fit under Ali Farouk-Manesh. And the more that you bring in these guards and you develop them and you send them to the pros, either the NBA or overseas, the easier it's going to be to start landing some of these high-profile prospects. And it's kind of funny to talk about this right before I get into CSU football, which is going to be such a 180 in terms of the tone of the conversation, I guess. But I think what's cool about basketball is it only takes 1 or 2 key signings to really make a major impact and really give you a chance to be competitive. And I know that we're about to go into a whole thing where I basically say it's not that important to recruit Colorado on the football side as much as some make it out to be. I do think that on the hoop side, there are some intriguing guys. If you could have landed Neek out of high school, like imagine you start landing some of these dudes, it only takes 1 or 2 to hit on to really make a major difference. Now that you're having that success locally, it's just really cool to see. I feel like it's the product of a lot of relationship building from the staff over the last 10 years, but also success. Nothing sells a program quite like winning. And the more you win, the more guys are going to want to sign up for it. And it just feels like all of a sudden the high ceiling local basketball recruits are looking at CSU in a different light. And I think that's what someday, cross your fingers, pray to God, all that, you would hope to see the conversation turn that way for CSU football. And it just hasn't been the case. And that's why I went through the data. I got into it with a couple of people online. Everybody has really intense opinions on local recruiting, and I get it. Usually it's due to biases, to be honest, like coaches who want their players recruited, family members or friends of somebody who they want recruited, trainers, all of that. They have their own agenda. My only agenda is that I want to see CSU football be successful. And I don't think that means you ignore the state of Colorado, because talent does come from here. That's clear. You look at the Christian McCaffreys of the world, Trey McBride, Lendale White back in the day. I mean, there are at times incredibly high ceiling players that come from Colorado, but we're being very disingenuous outside of Trey if we're acting like there was ever a realistic scenario where somebody like Christian McCaffrey was going to come to CSU. And that's kind of been the struggle with the local recruiting scene here. When I go through the numbers, 2015 through 2024, a 10-year period, roughly 208 kids based on the data available through 247, which is admittedly imperfect. I'm sure that's missing a couple of guys here and there. But based on what we have, and that's a pretty good sample size, roughly 208 kids signed with FBS programs over that 10-year period. That averages out to be a little over 20 guys per year. When you recognize that about 55% of those, a little over half, sign with P4, that means that realistically, you're looking at about 10 guys that are along the profile of what you should be recruiting as a program like CSU. And that's not to say that occasionally some guys can't slip through the cracks. That's not to say that CSU hasn't overlooked a player or two over the years. I still can't believe they never offered Andrew Wingard back in the day. And obviously he went on to have an awesome career at Wyoming. Muma's another guy that very easily could have been a Ram, but Bobo he offered him, but it doesn't sound like they followed through with it very much. Like there have been local guys that they've missed on, but I do feel like there are a lot of hot takes, a lot of things that are spewed as fact that are not necessarily true, which is that CSU is not active locally. That's not true. You look at, the top 15 recruits out of the state. Again, you're sending about 20 of them to the FBS per year. You want to be in on most of those guys. You're not necessarily going to offer 100% of the players who could potentially play at this level for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're not a system fit. Maybe you're deep at that position. Maybe they've made it very clear they have no interest in CSU. There are a lot of factors you have to include in all of that. Every single player has their own context. With all that in mind, though, if you're sending about 20 kids to the FBS per year as a state, 10 to 11 of them probably go in P4, 9 to 10 guys you're probably in the mix for. Realistically, if you're landing about half of them, I mean, you're doing a pretty good job. One of the things that I pointed out, of those 208 kids, only 27% of them over a 10-year period signed with a school that was outside of the Power Four other than CSU. To me, they're in on the types of players who are going to translate at this level. Now, you're not going to be able to keep a lot of them in state. That's just the reality. You look at a lot of these offensive linemen that have come out of Cherry Creek that have, gone on to places like USC and Iowa State and Kansas State. Those are pretty tough to recruit against, especially when you're not winning. Like until you start having sustained success, you're not really going to be in the mix for the type of player from the state that you would want to build around. Like, yes, you get some diamonds in the rough, you get some guys that are overlooked, and there have been some all-time greats from Colorado. Like, again, you should prioritize Colorado. You should always have a couple of guys in your starting lineup, multiple players in the 2 deep, but that's the case right now. You had 6 people from the state on your week 1 2 deep. You've got more players from the state than any other school in the FBS. The only collegiate programs that are going to have more are schools like Greeley. And then obviously when you drop to the D2 ranks and start looking at RMAC programs and stuff like that, is that the bar we're striving for? Like, I'm not trying to crap on the product of high school football locally, because I'm a big local high school football fan. We bring it up all the time. Bear Creek's 6-0 this year. I love to see it. Follow Loveland up here. It's something that I enjoy and frankly wish was a little bit bigger, but it's a numbers game, guys. You got to fish where the fish are. And if you can spend more time in a place that on average is going to send 100 kids to the FBS versus 20 kids to the FBS, that's just math. Like, I get that in a perfect world, CSU would land every capable local player and it'd be awesome. But the majority of them go P4. And so unless you have a desire to be a roster with 50 Colorado kids, but not necessarily the type that are going to translate at this level, you're hoping for like a Big Sky roster at best, if not more realistically, the RMAC. And I just hate how this conversation always has to become all or nothing. I can't point out that CSU actually does emphasize Colorado. And sure, it would be great to land a few more of these kids that are going to translate, but it's just not in the books. And here's all the numbers why. And instead it becomes some dude, I knew this kid who didn't get offered, and therefore CSU doesn't recruit local. It's all bullshit. They ignore the state. They ignore the players. That's just not the case. I know that some people are like, well, I work for this high school football team and I never saw them around. Guys, so much of recruiting these days, like everything in our life, is done digitally. It's watch and huddle. before they're going to show up in person for a player, they probably already know these days, more or less, if they're interested or not and intend on offering. That's more like the follow-up and to make sure that the in-person test matches what they saw from, the recruiting film. And I don't know. I just feel like so many hot takes get spewed so confidently and they lack context. They lack the accurate stats. I don't know. I am a Colorado guy. I love to see it. I just wish that we could talk about this with fairness, if that makes sense. Like, not everything has to be a Humpty Dumpty scenario. The sky is falling. We didn't sign enough Colorado kids this year. We must never recruit local. I don't know. It just gets a little bit annoying. The only thing that frustrates me more than this conversation, I would say, is the inevitable push that's going to come this winter when people start throwing Dave Logan's name out again. Greatest high school coach of all time. Epic Broncos radio commentator. We've got a show with him now, DNVR. Dave Logan's the man. It's not the same gig. It's just not. And if you don't believe me, I recommend you go look up some of the other great high school coaches who have tried to make the jump, like Tony Sanchez, who was an incredibly successful high school coach in the Vegas scene, went to UNLV. It was a train wreck. Had it work for Eddie Mack. Like the most experienced college coaches who have been in this for decades are struggling in the modern era and adapting to NIL. Throwing somebody out who has no experience at this level is just a recipe for disaster. Keep that in mind when you start throwing candidates my way over the next couple of weeks. Again, I don't want to do the whole coaching carousel thing every week. It does feel disrespectful to the staff currently in place, but I think we all know the writing is on the wall when it comes to 2026 at this point. I'm going to take a quick break, shout out a couple of our partners. We'll keep this rolling. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Say what's up in the Toyota chat, all that fun stuff. Hey, Colorado, stop by your local Dick's Sporting Goods for the hottest apparel and footwear from top brands like Nike, Adidas, Original, Hoka, DNVR, and more. Plus, score the latest equipment for baseball, football, soccer, basketball, golf, and all your tailgating essentials. Found a lower price, we'll match it with our best price guarantee. Get your gear fast with free curbside pickup at your nearest store or easy shipping from Dicks.com, because every season starts at Dick's. So cool that DNVR is now in Dick's Sporting Goods. If you're in a store and you see some DNVR gear, why don't you snap a photo, send it my way? It's just crazy to think about, people like me, super producer Kale behind the scenes. We were around long before any of this was even a fantasy, let alone something that could actually happen. I mean, it's just been crazy, as is our next partner to be with somebody like Coors Light. Life gets chaotic. I think everybody knows that. If you're a CSU fan, I mean, you certainly know all about chaos in your life, and you're choosing it willingly, which says something about you. But when you're trying to deal with that, and then you're trying to deal with the stresses of work and, projects and friends and everything that just gets in the way, it's easy to get bogged down. It's easy to be in a bad mindset. It's easy to be no fun to be around. You don't want to be that person. Always choose a chill mindset. Then when you are in a chill state of mind, when you're sitting in the living room, when you got your feet up, maybe you're outside with friends, crack open an ice cold Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment, cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado beer. Okay. Let's talk CSU Fresno State, because we're all just glutton for punishment, I suppose. It does not feel like this game is going to go very well, but again, just when I thought I was out, you brought me back in. Maybe it'll be one of those type of scenarios that would be pretty peak CSU as well. Like, we've all been beaten, abused, kicked around, and now, they're going to come kiss our cheek and tell us it's all going to be okay. And for whatever dumb reason, we believe them. We know it's not the truth, but we believe them anyways. That's what being a CSU fan basically is like in a nutshell. It's always being Charlie Brown, thinking this time she couldn't possibly pull the football away. Not again. There's no way they're going to do it again. And yet here we are. laying on the ground, head hurting, seeing stars, thinking, how was I this stupid? How did I really think that it would be anything other than what it has always proven to be for 20 straight years, with no sign of the end being anywhere near, which is just brutal. But here we are. So let's get into the history. For those of you that are unaware, this will be the first time that Fresno has come to CSU since 2015. That was actually a pretty fun day to be a Ram. CSU won that 37-0. Believe that was the last shutout win for CSU. Don't hold me to that. The last three meetings, due to some weird schedule quirks, mostly because of COVID, have all been out in Fresno. I like Fresno Stadium. It's outdated, needs a facelift. It holds a lot of people. They get great community support. They definitely could use an improvement in facilities, but it is kind of a fun atmosphere, old school college football feel. I went out there in 2019, which was actually a pretty fun game. That was post Colin Hill ACL tear, but Patrick O'Brien had a pretty nice game throwing the football. Trey McBride had a monster game. We were aware that Trey was a guy at that point, but I believe that was a 2-touchdown game for Trey, one where he caught a ball across the middle of the field, then ran to the sideline, turned up field, and outran everybody. It was just one of those plays that kind of let you see how he was freaky. He was a little bit different athletically than everybody else in the conference. CSU leads the all-time series 10-8, I believe. Both teams' media guides said something different, and then when I looked up the results online, it said something different even yet. So based on that, I think it's 10-8, for the research I was able to find. Fresno's won 2 straight. Before that, CSU had won 6 of 7. But if you're old enough to remember, Fresno was genuinely a thorn in the side of both CSU and CU in the late 90s, early 2000s. Some really good Buffs and Rams teams that won 9-10 games would lose to Fresno State. And it's one of those where, had those games gone the other way, I mean, you're looking at potentially being ranked at least top 15, top 10 even at times. They were kind of a pain in our ass for quite a while. They beat CSU in 1999, 2001, and 2002. 2001 and 2002 were by a combined 5 points, if I remember correctly. I think one was a 2-point game that they lost, and then the other was a 3-point game in overtime, or maybe even double overtime. There have been some thrillers. And then if you go back even earlier in the Lubick era, I'm talking 94 to 96, the Rams won a couple of those as well, 44, 42 type games. So these are two programs that deceptively have a lot of history in the 21st century, are certainly going to have even more with the upcoming move to the Pac-12. One of my favorite memories, actually, and what I think is still one of the more underratedly fun CSU games, the 2008 New Mexico Bowl. CSU, Gartrell Johnson, Corey Sperry, I believe Kyle Bell's still on the team at that point. They win a shootout against, was it Ryan Matthews? I think the Fresno running back went on to play for the Chargers after that, but Gartrell went crazy in that game. Just a random Saturday morning New Mexico Bowl that I watched with my dad and little brother, and we're just going crazy watching CSU put up all kinds of points. Thought that was going to be the start of something special under Fairchild. We still had hope at that point. And then 2009 through 2011 was just a dark, dark time that we don't want to talk about. Even, by 2012, it had gotten a little bit better, but that was the last time that Fresno beat CSU in Fort Collins. At least CSU has that going for them. But last year, CSU goes into Fresno with an opportunity to hopefully, play their way into a Mountain West championship situation. Fresno, after looking dead in the water for a month, all of a sudden finds their groove offensively. Donaldson, I think he went for about 150 on the ground. They whooped CSU. I know the Rams made it a little bit interesting with kind of a comeback late, but I mean, that was a pretty thorough beating in the trenches. And I think that's what's worrisome going into this game is you just look at where CSU's struggling and where Fresno succeeds, and it's not an ideal matchup. I mean, they are massive in the offensive line, 4 guys, 310 plus. They have a starting left tackle who's a freshman actually, but he's with a bunch of experienced players, and CSU went hard at him. Braden Walton, I don't know if you guys remember that name, took an OV back in June, then went to Wazoo the weekend after, initially verbally committed to Washington State. He's out of Clovis High School, ended up staying home, going to Fresno State, a really big pickup for that program. Their tight end, actually, Richie Anderson, is also a guy that CSU recruited pretty hard, was a one-time CSU commit on the defensive side of things before flipping late to Fresno, wanted to play offense. He's solid. So, I mean, in a different world, a couple of Fresno's key players could be Rams, but hey, you win some, you lose some on the recruiting trail. I said it earlier, but I was surprised at how quickly they were able to hit the ground running this year. They've got a clear-cut identity. They don't do anything sexy, and we're going to have my buddy Gabe Camarillo. I talked with him earlier this week. We're going to play that interview in just a second. This is one of the things he talks about. They're just kind of a really tough football team. It's not flashy. They run the football. They play quality defense, and they grind out games. They won a really tight game on the island against Hawaii, which is always tough to do. Had like a 3-score lead against Nevada last week. Nevada made it interesting in the second half, but were able to hold on to that one. They are a little bit streaky, feast or famine offensively. They average 30 points a game, and this is one thing Gabe talks about as well. Those numbers may be a little bit misleading just because they have had some defensive success, some pick sixes and stuff like that. They have Kurt Warner's son at quarterback, EJ Warner. It's kind of a fun storyline. One of the more experienced transfers, had been at Rice, had been at Temple. He's doing kind of vintage EJ Warner things, which is throwing the ball up for grabs. I will say he's done a good job the last couple of weeks of cutting down the turnovers. Does feel like that's going to be a pretty big key for CSU, and I'll get into that when I get into my keys of the game. Taylor says, enjoying the content lately, J Mike. Really looking forward to basketball season. Much love, man. Much love to everybody rocking with us, even despite this season being straight from hell. I mean, Kale put some flames in the thumbnail photo, and it felt very fitting because it has felt like a lot of us are in hell. It's just one of those years where anything and everything that could go wrong has at this point, outside of basically the overturn call against UNC. It's like the one break that CSU has had go their way all season long. Injuries, penalties. It's just been bad. It's just been bad. But hopefully the luck will turn the other way this weekend. Fresno coming in hot with a 5-game winning streak. But as I talked about, historically, they've kind of been a thorn in our side of some good seasons. Maybe, we're due for one at this point. We're due to give them a little bit of heartbreak. They're 5-1, feeling themselves. Maybe they'll get humbled by a struggling CSU team. I would not hold my breath on that at this point, especially with the way that they're running the ball effectively. Couple of productive backs, and then Warner can move a little bit as well. They've got 10 different players that have scored a touchdown this season, and 6 different players who have recorded an interception. So it's really been kind of the exact opposite of what we've seen here in Fort Collins, where you lost a lot of key producers from these last couple of years. You're going to need some players to step up for you and to make some plays. And to the credit of this team, that's what they're doing. I don't think they really have a bona fide superstar on either side of the ball, but here they are sitting 5-1 with a chance to be bowl eligible for the 5th year in a row. It's just a program that's really impressive. I would put Fresno State in the same vein as like Utah State basketball, where I just keep assuming at some point that the turnover, that the coaching changes are going to catch up to them, but they just keep on trucking. They do a great job of hiring coaches that fit their profile. I mean, like Matt Entz, a defensive-minded, tough, run the football. Like that feels so Fresno to me. I know they had some of those big passing offenses with the Carr brothers and Devontae Adams back in the day, but when I think of Fresno, for whatever reason, I mean, it's kind of a tougher city. Like if that, it's not the flash of Los Angeles. A little bit more agriculture, a little bit more blue collar, and he just felt like a really good hire for them coming off of the Tedford era. Kind of keep the best of what Tedford brought to the table, but bring a little bit of a different perspective. And they've been really good this year. It's been impressive. So we're gonna play that interview with Gabe Camarillo, Fresno State insider, here in just a second. He'll let you know kind of what's been going down in Fresno this year. Let's take a quick break, shout out a couple of our awesome partners, and then we will get that interview rolling. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota's built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails, whether you're hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma. Check out the Land Cruiser. Toyota has 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive like the Epic 4Runner. They also have more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from. The Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck is sweet, but never forget, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail, which is what makes them perfect for Colorado living. You can go skiing, you can go, camping in the mountains, but you can also cruise around downtown. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics. They're also the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. Whether you need snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees, Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. If you're looking for gear to make your brand stand apart, Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. Start your order, and their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel you need. They have a partnership with CSU as part of their on-campus collection. Got the gold one in the back, getting a new Campbell one soon as well. Branded Bills really is awesome. We've got custom DNVR hats now, which you can get when you sign up to be a diehard if that's your cup of tea. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. All right, y'all. Here is an interview with Fresno State insider Gabe Camarillo. Spent about 15 minutes with him just to get you guys an inside perspective on the Bulldogs. We'll wrap up with the Mountain West Power Ranking, kind of give some thoughts on what's happening around the league. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, keep them firing in the Toyota chat. We can get to as many of them as we can. But first off, here is that interview with Gabe. All right, we have got a special guest, good friend of mine, Gabe Camarillo, sports anchor for Fox 26 News out in Fresno, formerly of ESPN Fresno, as well as the Bark Board, the 247 site for Fresno. I wanted to get Gabe on. We were talking a little bit here before we started recording because in terms of where the teams are at about halfway through the season compared to what expectations were in the preseason, CSU and Fresno might be two of the more surprising teams in the Mountain West. So I guess just first things first, you having fun this year? I mean, 5-1 out of the gate. Who saw this coming?
Definitely more fun to cover a team that's doing well, as you probably know, right? Because when they're not doing well, you got to ask the hard questions. You got to deal with the fans wondering what happened. I think a lot of people might be wondering that for CSU, but also for Fresno State for a different reason, because what happened? You lose your starting quarterback, you lose all three starting receivers, you lose most of the offensive line, and yet these Bulldogs have won 5 of 6 to start the season. I think a lot of it has to do with the other side of the football that we're not talking about.
That's a good point. I think that Matt Entz was considered one of the stronger hires this past cycle, just based on his reputation at North Dakota State. Obviously went over and did some stuff with USC. But I don't think that people expected this Fresno team to be scoring 30 points a game. So I do have some questions, I guess, about the defense, and that's most certainly the strength of the team. But I've been pleasantly surprised by the offense, just given the fact that you did lose Mikey Keene, you did lose Malik Sherrod, you did lose some of those leading pass catchers. Here they are, though. They're moving the ball and they're putting up points.
Well, it was against Colorado State last year when Fresno State discovered, hey, we have a really good freshman running back. Bryson Donaldson had around 142 yards on like 12 carries against CSU in their senior night last year. So they beat the Rams in that last home game. Donaldson kind of showed the future a little bit with what he could do. But I've also been a little bit surprised. I want to use that word because we expected Rayshawn Speedy Luke to be a difference maker as a transfer from Arizona. He missed most of spring with a torn meniscus that he was still recovering from. That's why he actually redshirted last season from Arizona. But when he hit the ground running in fall camp, I think a lot of us were excited to see what he could do. Really disappointed a little bit in that opener against Kansas, as did most of the team. But then the next week against Georgia Southern, he scores the Bulldogs' first touchdown of the season at home. So it was definitely a sign of things to come. Speedy Luke has only continued to be a game breaker against Oregon State. He had a 49-yard touchdown run that was critical because that was the last offensive touchdown. That touchdown happened in the second quarter around the 9-minute mark. That was the last offensive touchdown Fresno State scored in the entire Oregon State game. They won that game after a botched punt that was returned for a touchdown. I don't know if you saw the highlights of that, but it was like the Oregon State punter couldn't grab it. It kind of squirted away, and a third string corner who was playing special teams scoops it up and brings it in for the touchdown. And then they also had a pick six to close out Oregon State. Everything else that they had was field goals and then special teams and defensive touchdowns. So they are averaging over 30 points a game, but there's so many of them that weren't scored by the offense, like the Hawaii game. Hawaii's trying to add to their lead, and then a pick six is thrown and returned by Kibion Thunderbird. And that ends up being the game-winning score because Hawaii then comes back and touchdown with about 10 seconds left. Fresno State stops the two-point conversion and win 23-21. So, yes, the offense does look a little better than we expected because E.J. Warner, who had 5 interceptions and no touchdown through his first 3 games, we're starting to throw more touchdowns and less interceptions. So they are playing better, but I think looking at their points per game, you got to look at how they scored because the offense is doing its part, but the defense is also really carrying this team so far.
You mentioned DJ Warner, who is one of the more experienced transfer quarterbacks in the portal this past cycle. He's always been a guy who's willing to throw it up. I mean, I think his touchdowns and interceptions are about 1-to-1, over the course of his career. As a Denver Broncos fan, he reminds me a little bit of Jake Plummer back in the day. Like, yeah, he's going to make some dumb decisions. He's also going to be kind of fun to watch just because it's a little bit erratic. But, you mentioned there he's increased the touchdown production these past couple of weeks. He's decreased the amount of turnovers. How much of that would you put on just making better decisions, or do you think it's a product of, the offense executing better? Like, what's his chemistry like with this receiving core right now? Fresno, they obviously have that strong ground game and the foundation with those 2 talented backs, but just what are your thoughts on the passing offense right now? Because it was something that I had my eyes on coming into the year.
Yeah, we've definitely asked Entz that before, even before this upcoming game against CSU, because we are noticing there's less interceptions. And he says that it's because of the relationship with the offensive coordinator, Josh Davis, who comes from a run-heavy background at South Dakota State. He loved running the ball at South Dakota, and then before that at South Dakota State. So not surprised to see Fresno State probably 70% run, 30% pass. They're not asking Warner to do much, but that's why the interceptions were so glaring, because when you throw the ball 20 times a game and 2 or 3 of them are interceptions, like, that's going to really hurt your team. Well, that's not happening anymore. He hasn't had a multi-interception game, I want to say, since the Georgia Southern game. I don't think he had more than 1 interception against Oregon State. He had one against Nevada this past Saturday, but then he comes around and throws 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. But then in the third quarter, the offense totally disappears. They go 3 and out, 4 straight drives, allow Nevada back in that game. I think, to answer your question, the way that Warner makes up for his lack of good decisions sometimes is by making the right decision when it matters most. Because when it was 3rd and 11 and they need a first down because they're going to give Nevada the ball back with 4 minutes left if they don't, 3rd and 11, you would think he throws it, right? No, he sees everyone's covered, so he takes it himself. Little E.J. Warner, 6 feet, 180 pounds, probably, doesn't care. Like, he's going to take a punishment. He leans in to get the first down, and he does take a big hit, but he ends up getting Fresno State the win because that first down allows Fresno State to keep the ball for the last 8 minutes and 42 seconds to bleed the clock out. So, and that's not the last time I've seen him do that, or the first time, because I think back to the Oregon State game, he had to lead a game-winning field goal drive with about 1 minute and 4 seconds left. He ran the ball for 50 yards on that drive. Like, he's going to just run the ball if he has to. Maybe he doesn't want to make the wrong decision. Maybe he doesn't want to put it in harm's way, so he takes it himself. I've seen him find a way to lead this team to victory 3 different times without being Jake Haener, without being David Carr, without being Derek Carr. He can just be E.J. Warner and make the small but right play and rely on all of his playmakers, which there aren't many of on this team, but there's enough to get them at least 5 wins in the first 6 games.
I think you have to credit the toughness of a team like Fresno State that's been able to grind out some games. Hawaii is a great example, but I mean, even a couple of the other games early in the season. But with some of the stuff you're talking about, it has been a little bit feast or famine offensively, it seems like. So are there any worries about this being sustainable? Like, is there any sense that some of these victories are maybe a little bit flukier, or I don't want to use fluky or lucky, but just favorable, I guess I'd put it. Sometimes you need a couple of bounces to go your way. But is there any fear that because it has been kind of feast or famine, it could revert the other way here over the second half of the season?
I think this whole season's been inverse of last year. I think all the bad luck Fresno State had last year is now kind of converting itself to good luck this year. Because last year they got really bad luck. They were up on Washington State and John Mateer. They lose because Mikey King tosses a pick six. They were up on Hawaii 20-7 in the fourth quarter. They lose because of some bad officiating and just bad defense too. So we're noticing that all the one-score games and bad luck Fresno State had last year are gone. And it's because of this guy named Matt Entz. Like his style of football, his why of why he does it is just so impressive. Why do they play football? Because they want to beat up the other team. They want to impose their will on their opponent. They want the opponent to feel Fresno State football after 4 quarters. And that's, I think, why they hold on to the fourth quarter. Nevada's defense was probably like praying that Fresno State would turn the ball over on that final drive or not get the third down. But Fresno State kept coming with the power run. And I think if you have to tackle a running back 50 times in a game, by the 40th time, you're probably not going to want to do it anymore because of how physical Fresno State's running backs are and how their offensive line is geared towards running the football, punishing football. So Matt Entz, I mean, he listened to some of the people who are calling it luck. He's like, I'd rather be lucky than have lost. So yeah, go ahead and call it luck. I'll gladly take it. I make my own luck by making these guys run extra hard in practice in August. So that way in October and November, we're the tougher team in the fourth quarter. So I don't think it's luck so much as just this team is a 4-quarter team. And so teams that don't practice as hard as Fresno State, maybe like a Nevada or an Oregon State, we saw that those teams faltered when they had to make a play in the fourth quarter and couldn't against Fresno State.
The defense has hit on, some P4 transfers. You mentioned Thunderbird, and I think Pearson is a P4 guy as well. Obviously, drawing a blank on his name. Corey Foreman, the highly touted kid that came over from Texas last year. Are you surprised about how quickly this unit's been able to gel on that side of the ball?
Yeah, they lost a lot of guys to P4. Phoenix Jackson went to Baylor. Gabriel Lightfoot joined Coach Prime in Colorado. He was our best defensive lineman, Gabriel Lightfoot. So it was a little bit of a concern, just like what I said on the offense. The defense lost a lot of star power, but you mentioned it. They hit on some guys that joined this past off season, namely at linebacker. Jaden Pearson is top 10 in the country in tackles. I noticed there's a CSU Ram right there at the top almost, Owen Long. I'm looking forward to seeing how those two linebackers lead their defenses in this game. But no, yeah, Pearson is a revelation because he's originally a safety. He's not supposed to play linebacker, but his coaches at Utah State last year moved him to linebacker. They thought he would probably be a better fit there because it's just so fast and he's rangy and he's able to honestly deliver a big hit despite his slender frame. But then Utah State's new coaching staff decide to discard him. They tell him, we're not going to find a spot for you in our system. You're not a match for us. Pearson says, okay, I'll go to Fresno State and just, lead the Mountain West in tackles or be second in tackles because of Owen Long. I think he's probably a good example of why this Fresno State defense is so good. Guys that have a chip on their shoulder. I mean, Kevion Thunderbird had a lot to go through before he went to ASU, and it just wasn't a right fit for him. But he comes to Fresno State, and the coaching staff is more of a mesh, and that's why he's now a big difference maker. He was the difference in the Hawaii game. You look at the secondary, and it's not transfers there. It's a lot of continuity. Multi-year starters like Cameron Braca, Azilian Hamilton was the only preseason all-conference guy, and he's played like it. He's a lockdown corner. So I think it's It's the fact that we returned a lot of experience in the secondary, and we knew that was going to be solid, but we were betting on guys in the front seven to pay off, and so far they all have. The only question I would have is up front, the defensive line. They did allow some runs to Nevada. I think the way the freshman quarterback came in for Nevada and just commanded the offense right away concerns me because CSU has a backup quarterback that Fresno State doesn't have a lot of film on, but's probably going to start this game. And it's mentioned like, yeah, we're kind of going in this a little blind because they just changed their quarterback. And so we don't have a huge sample size of film to go off of. So if there is an advantage, it's that Fresno State prepares and almost prepares too well because I'm sure they watched a lot of BFN and now maybe none of it's going to be useful.
What are the keys for Fresno State in this one? Like if it goes to script, how does this play out for Fresno State? What are you worried about, I guess, aside from, maybe CSU getting that run game going?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Entz mentioned three things when we asked him about CSU. He mentioned the offensive line, he mentioned the running backs, and he mentioned your linebackers. And so I think it kind of goes to that, right? Can Fresno State stop the run and force whoever the quarterback is at CSU to Brousseau? And so he's making his second start or third start?
It'll be a second start, third appearance.
And so I think Fresno State's going to want a guy with that little experience versus EJ Warner, who's made over 40 starts in his career. They're going to want, to make the younger quarterback with less experience beat him with their arm. So I'm sure they'll sell out for the run, and that's going to be a key to the game. Stop the run and establish the run. This team is kind of boring. Like, think about watching a football team in the 80s, and that's Fresno State football. They're not going to wow you with the 20-yard explosive plays through the air, but they will get 20-yard explosive plays on the ground. They do have the ability to do that, especially because they're returning their starting left tackle, a blue chipper, Braden Walton. He was committed to Washington State, and then he thought, you know what? I like it here at Fresno. I'm going to stay at Fresno State, and that's a good thing for the Bulldogs because he's been one of their best run blockers. Braden Walton's coming back from injury. They didn't have him last week, and it showed. They did not run the ball well at all. So good to have Walton back. If they can run the ball for Fresno State and stop the run against Colorado State, and then somehow find a way to manage about 21 points, I think that's Fresno State's number. Get 21 and over, and you're not going to a bar, but you're definitely going to get a win. I think that's going to be the case.
Well, CSU's only scored more than 21 once this season, so I don't think the offense is coming in big cocky. All right, shout out to our guy, Gabe Camarillo, for getting us an inside perspective there. Definitely drinking the Matt Entz Fresno State Kool-Aid, but why wouldn't you? You're sitting there at 5-1. They're having fun. Great to get his perspective, pick his brain a little bit on this season. Kind of going off of what he said here, and this kind of goes in line with what Sterling's asking in the Toyota chat. Justin, he says, highly doubt CSU is competitive in this one, but there's still talent on this roster. In your opinion, what's one matchup or a player fans should watch that could surprise Fresno State? I feel like deceptively we could be in for a big Rocky Beers game. There's going to be a lot of focus on the run game on both sides, like Gabe was talking about. It's clearly been the best element of CSU's offense this year. They're going to sell out on trying to, really limit the production that you get from guys like Dupree and Avant and Jay Marsh. I really would like to see a little bit of play action this week. I'm hoping to see some of it. Some of that is dependent on the O-line holding out better than they did a week ago against San Diego State, which I didn't feel like was a banner game for them. But I feel like the tight end in the middle of the field is kind of an area where they haven't really done a ton of it outside of the Washington game and maybe a little bit in that second half against UTSA when Brousseau came in. But I think this might be an opportunity for Rocky Beers to quietly have kind of a nice game. You get the linebackers sucked in, get their eyes, going downhill and maybe catch them off guard a little bit. Maybe that's wishful thinking on my part. I also think this could potentially, if you can have any success stopping the run, be an opportunity for the guys in the secondary to make some plays. Fresno has done a better job of limiting turnovers of late, but that's a big key for me. That's a good way to transition here into my keys to the game. Number one, defensively, you have to create far more chaos. I don't want to say that the team quit in the second half against San Diego State because I feel like the injuries are a major factor. The lack of depth is a factor. And I think the defense was especially just gassed after kind of how it played out late in the second quarter, early in the third quarter, and maybe a little bit of dejection set in. But they've got to be far more disruptive with that front seven. They're able to get home with some of the pressure off of the edge. They've had success sending the corners and nickel and stuff like that. But the front seven, guys like Jaquez Evans, I asked about that on Monday, kind of what Jay was seeing from him, or Tuesday, I guess, because the schedule got switched. And he knew what I was alluding to, which is, this was a guy who had a ton of success under Summers back in the day, was really billed as a game changer for the defense, and has been pretty quiet. Jay brought up how they've had to move him around quite a bit due to trying to plug holes that have been caused by some of these injuries. Maybe that is something that I wouldn't have considered, but like, he's a guy they really need to make some noise. It'd be huge to have a breakout performance from him or someone else, but you got to create more chaos, especially with that front seven, because if you can't generate any pressure on the quarterback, you're not stopping the run. With that Fresno State O-line, they will run your ass out of town. Turnovers would be huge in this one. I said it last week. If you're going to play as aggressive as CSU does defensively, you better create some chaos. You better create turnovers. You better create plays for negatives, because when you don't, boy, does it put you in a vulnerable position. And we saw that. Put the safeties in a bad spot on 2 long touchdowns last week. Until they start generating more chaos, you might as well just do what they did last year and drop into cover 3 and stuff and play zone, because it's not helping the cause at the moment. I don't think, which is a bummer, because I was really excited about this style change, and I think if they were healthy, we'd be seeing a little bit more success on that side of the ball. Got to stop the run first and foremost. It's their bread and butter. If you can't, you're going to be in for a long night, probably lose by multiple scores. And then the last one, this you could point to penalties, stuff like that, which they have done a better job these last couple of weeks, although the one penalty that they had last week took away turnovers, so they're still committing untimely ones. But I put show some fight, man. You're playing for your season at this point. I know that all of the things that we were striving for more or less gone out the window. A 6-6 season would not feel like a success at all, based on the preseason expectations. But going 6-6 feels a hell of a lot better than going 4-8 or 3-9, 2-10, something like that. Show some fight, guys. Do something. Chin up, make some hits. I'm looking for anything to give me hope for, this second half of the season of, well, at least they're going to get that ground game going. It'll be, fun to watch that. Like, I just need something I can look to, because to be frank, it's feeling very Colorado Rockies with the vibes in this program right now. Like, not only are you bad, you're boring and hopeless. You don't have anybody to look to for hope. I mean, like, Owen Long's phenomenal. Jalen Dupree is phenomenal. A running back and a linebacker can't do it by themselves. Like, those guys are so good. But we need to see some of these guys at receivers step up and make plays. We need to see some of the younger guys on both sides of the ball in the trenches play some of their best football yet. Need to see some of those experienced guys in the secondary start making some big plays. Until that happens, there's just not a lot of hope for this to turn around. With that in mind, get into our latest edition of the Mountain West Power Ranking. I'll throw out a couple of picks that I like, and we'll get out of here. John says, I would sacrifice a Buffalo to go 6-6. You'd sacrifice a Buffalo just for the sake of it. We're CSU guys, right? Mountain West Power Ranking, number 12, where they've been all season, where I don't anticipate moving them from any point soon. The Nevada Wolfpack. That is a hopeless, dire situation. It's tough. It's tough to be a Nevada fan. I'm just not going to lie there. Number 11, Misery Loves Company. We've got the Wyoming Cowboys, who lost one of the ugliest, dumbest games I've seen in a long time against UNLV last weekend. There was some weirdness with the weather. They had like hail and snow, and that's a factor, I suppose, but they had 2 punts blocked for touchdowns and had 2 more that could have been blocked. It reminded me so much of the Adazio game against Boise State, where I think they had 3 punts blocked plus gave up a punt return for a touchdown. A lot like what you could say with CSU this year. They have not looked like a well-coached football team. They play hard defensively, but they just can't score enough points offensively. I mean, that game in Laramie might be a game of attrition. I mean, you look at the injury list, CSU and Wyoming could fill a phone book right now, but it might be just like who can score 20 points in that game might be enough based on the way these teams are going. I've got CSU just above them, though, at 10. So we've got Nevada 12, YO 11, CSU 10. Coming in just above them, San Jose State, nice home win against New Mexico. I said it last week. I was shocked by that spread that they were favored, but I added that Vegas is never wrong. Boy, are they never wrong. Wouldn't hit the panic button on UNM or anything like that. But I do wonder if they maybe outperformed their capability a little bit here early on in the season, and maybe they fall down to earth a little bit. It's going to be a long haul rebuild there if it's ever going to come to fruition. I've got Utah State at 8, although a lot of that is dependent on Bryson Barnes being healthy and playing. Should be able to play against Hawaii from what I've read. Air Force at 7. They just can't stop anyone defensively. They scare me offensively. I think they're going to put some points on the board against CSU. They can throw the ball too. Zarka, the Colorado kid they got running around back there, good athlete. They're just a mess defensively. Kept New Mexico above them just because they're the fun story. But if you put a knife to my back, I probably would take Air Force straight up against New Mexico right now. Hawaii at 5, team I'm really high on. Injuries starting to become a little bit worrisome. They need to win this week at home. They're home dogs against Utah State. Second time this conference slate, they've been home dogs, which is a little surprising to me. Vegas not loving Hawaii and Timmy Chang as much as I do. But big test for them this weekend. I like them straight up. Finally, Fresno State, the highest, or San Diego State, excuse me, the highest they've been all year at number 4. Like I said, post game the other night, if they can throw the ball like they did against CSU on top of what they can do from a ground game, now all of a sudden they're legit contenders. Fresno State at 3 with a chance to continue to ascend. You get another road win here. They have a pretty strong case to be in the top 2. UNLV remains undefeated. I still genuinely don't believe they're that good of a team, but hey, they're finding ways to skank out games. They're athletic. They've got a great running back. They make big plays on both sides of the ball. It's inconsistent. It's boom or bust, but they found a way. A lot like you could say about Fresno State, stylistically a lot different, but unlike CSU, they found a way to get it done. So credit where it's due. Finally, Boise State at 1. I see these graphics where people have them ranked as like the 8th or 9th best team out of the group of 5 this year. There's some good teams. Like, don't get me wrong, South Florida's legit. Tulane, Navy's looked pretty good this year. App State, Boise just beat the hell out of App State, but they are not the sexiest, but they're still going to go 10-2 and probably win the league and probably make the playoff and probably be the Boise State that we're all used to because they've got good talent. They've got 4 incredible running backs. The line's solid. Madsen looked pretty pedestrian against Notre Dame, I won't lie. But I still think that they are by far the most dangerous team in the league right now. And while I would love to see the dynasty come to an end, I don't foresee it happening anytime soon. All right. Before we get out of here, week 7 picks. I don't want to pick against the entire slate because then you're taking games that you would not reasonably or intelligently bet on. And so I only try and talk about the spreads that I think are actually enticing. And to me, San Diego State minus 7.5, 7.5 point favorites at Nevada. I like that. I think Nevada will hang around, but I like San Diego State to win it by 8 or 9. Hawaii 2.5 point dogs at home against Utah State. I like the Warriors straight up on that one. Give me the money line. I said the same thing against Fresno State. They had it, threw a late pick 6 and choked it away. But I still have faith in what is being built there, especially with what's happening on the defensive side. The leap they have made there has been tremendous. And I think if they can get this type of win, they are a team you have to take seriously in the Mountain West title race. That's all I've got for you guys. I'll be at Canvas tomorrow night. If you're still not sick of me and you want to hear me talk more sports, I am hosting the pregame and postgame show for the Avs. both tonight and Saturday, all home games this season. Should be a lot of fun. Shout out to super producer Kale behind the scenes, making all this happen. Shout out to everybody for rocking with us, even what has been a season from hell. Hopefully brighter days to come. Thank God basketball season is right around the corner. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.